My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast.
Live from Bunker 513.
Yep, apparently this is Bunker 513.
So I should say Fallout Shelter 513.
It should be Fallout Shelter 513, 100%.
Yes.
We'll take down the big bake-off sign out the front and put the MasterChef sign up. We'll talk about that one shortly, though. This was the grand final of the Great British Bake Off. This was also a grand final that, let's be honest, the majority of us who were watching this episode already kind of knew the answer to the question before it was asked.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was coming, so...
Yeah, we've done a very good job, I think, on the podcast, and I can say that because, I'm going to brag, of not giving away who the winner was, even though I've been sitting there with a bit of disappointment going, I can't believe that David's going to win.
I needed to see how it happened. I needed to see how someone who's never had Star Baker, one, makes it to the final three. I don't think we've ever had... I've ever clocked
I'm sure someone out there is going to yell at us and go,
But I've never clocked someone as not having won a Star Baker before.
The idea of...
Do you know what I mean?
The idea of David not having won a Star Baker at all. The others, Alice has won 2, and of course Steph has won 4. It's amazing. And look, first of all, before we say anything about this episode, 2 things I think we have to stress. 1, David looks like a perfectly nice guy.
Absolutely, and
perfectly nice.
He works as a nurse.
Yep.
He works obviously with people in disadvantage. Like he goes overseas to do it. So
absolutely lovely guy
as a person, fantastic person.
Secondly, if you are basing it entirely off the showstopper, and let's face it, they were, David wins.
Absolutely,
right. There is a broader
point
to be made about this, and we're going to go through it, and we're going to break the episode down. But the broader point to be made off this is, and I think I mentioned it on Twitter, and I think funnily enough, no one has come back at me and gone, oh, well, that's a bit cynical, or everyone's sort of gone, yeah, you're right, which is that David did indeed have an amazing showstopper.
Yep.
That's probably his one good bake for the series.
It's his one standout solid bake. If he'd have started baking like that about 4 to 5 episodes ago, I would have been Team David all the way. That was his level that he brought in.
When they were talking about the bakers, they painted the story. And I'll go quickly through what the story was at the start, and then we'll go through back to Noel and Sandy. But the story they told at the start for the 3 bakers was they said that Alice was the stressed baker and that Alice bakes with stress.
Okay.
And that she buzzes around. That was what they said. Alice, I'm not making this up. That's what they said. Alice is the stress baker. Then they talked about Steph was the talented baker, 4-time Star Baker, but she lacks a lot of self-belief and self-confidence. And they said that she constantly has a problem, and they went back and talked about that later on, which we'll get to. Then they basically got to David. And when they got to David, they said, and I quote them here, he is fantastic with presentation, but he's really bad on flavour.
Yeah, it's been consistent throughout this whole series that David's flavours have always been off.
And he talked about this, was it last week or the week before, where he said, I just focus on making it look good.
Because that's what's going to get me.
Because that's what's going to get me over the line. And sure enough, in the grand final, it got him over the line.
You know what? That's some MasterChef words right there.
This is somebody gaming.
Strategic baking.
This is somebody gaming the system.
Yeah.
So let's get into the episode. We start with Noel being fired from the cannon.
Right into my lap.
Now, stop dreaming, Chris. Stop dreaming.
I dressed up as a tree and caught him in my big old branches.
So
never to be let go again.
They made a joke at this point in time about the size of the match.
Well, it's not the size of the match.
They were like, is that a full-size match, or are you just a really small person? Now, with that, we're going to cut quickly to the drinking game. Reference to Sandy's height.
Tick.
We were gone before they even got to the credits.
Yes.
Let's quickly run through the rest of them. Hollywood handshake, didn't happen. Noel distracts a baker, did happen. We're about to get to it. Showstopper disaster. Yes. Technical has less than 5 instructions. No, it had a few more than that. It's anyone's to win. They said that. Toughest decision ever. They didn't say that.
No.
They did say they were going to be thinking about it for a bit, but they didn't say toughest decision ever.
No.
Baker helps another baker. That didn't happen.
No.
Innuendos. No, everyone was far too busy running around like crazy people.
It was a stress tent.
But
it was
basically,
a total stress tent.
I kind of wasn't sure where we were going to go with this, so having the hype Sandy reference there allowed you all to get nice and plastered.
Look, it set you up for the rest of the show, really.
So let's start with the signature, shall we?
Chocolate cake.
Yeah, the ultimate chocolate cake. Now, I'm expecting a certain number of tiers or a certain number of layers or...
a certain quantity of chocolate.
I'm going to...
certain number of chocolates to use.
I'm going to quote...
ruby chocolate, that doesn't count.
No, because ruby chocolate's terrible. I'm going to quote Prue Leaf.
Yeah.
We don't want bog standard. We want really chocolatey. Paul Hollywood added...
Yeah.
Cocoa is a possibility.
I don't know about you, but when you make it a chocolate cake, what possibilities are there? There's chocolate
and cocoa.
And cocoa. How else are we going to infuse
There's
chocolate
probably
in?
going to be a combination of both.
Yeah.
Which Paul did say later on. He went, "Oh, but I'd like them to use real chocolate too." And I'm like, but like the way they explained what is supposed to be a complex grand final bake was they want it really chocolatey. It might have cocoa in it.
That's just my request for, a normal cake. I just want it really chocolatey.
I absolutely hated that this was the first bake of the grand final. And I know there are some people who went, "Oh no, I really like it because, you've got to, it's about technique." It turns out it wasn't really. They just wanted to know, could you taste chocolate? It's all they were after. But you could have just served them up chocolate.
In the shape of a cake.
Well, that would have served the last challenge too. You could have killed 2 challenges with 1 stone. If only Steph had known.
Yes.
Heartache could have been saved. But Steph did say at this point in time that she hates chocolate cakes that are just brown sponge. I agree. They are the worst. When you see a cake and you go, "Oh, that's a chocolate cake," and you go, "No, it was just..." To quote The Simpsons about good gravy, "Thank you, it's just brown and water." And those chocolate cakes exist. I hate them. They used to turn up at nursing homes because I think they figure that the old people don't have the taste buds anymore.
No, so it just kind of like gives them the belief.
When you buy
it's a belief of chocolate cake. You got to have faith in it. If you don't believe in this cake that it is chocolate, are you really having chocolate cake?
If you are in the cake, not the cake aisle in terms of baked goods, but where those pre-packaged cakes are in a supermarket, when you used to be allowed to go there.
Remember those
next
days?
to the bread, there used to be like packet cakes, usually made by a company. I'll rhyme them with Mrs. Gipling.
Or Sight Dings.
Yes, or them as well, or
Means.
Top Tist. So all of those ones which were just in the packet, and you open them up and go, "Oh, chocolate cake," and then you would spend the next half an hour, as you just pointed out before, believing in the chocolate.
Yep, there's chocolate in this.
That tastes like chocolate.
But then you got the mud cake introduced, which gave the people at home like you and me when we were younger and our parents had no idea how to fucking bake.
The very, very, very tight mud cake.
Yes.
My God, you want to talk about knocking the air out of something. A Woolworths mud cake can be used as a doorstop in a necessity. It can also be used to fill up gaps in your house. If you find that there's a wall where there's a draft coming through, just wedge one of those mud cakes.
I mean, the reason why they're popular is like, when you need a quick office cake to like, "Oh, someone's birthday, let's get a cake."
They're $4.
They get a $4 mud cake. And it serves like 60 people because you only need a very thin slice.
Because you can't eat more than a thin slice of it. Because it's so heavy. Like, and when you pick it up, the weight in the damn thing.
Yeah.
It's really weighty. What they were after here was possibly, I wonder if you'd served a Woolworths mud cake.
You know what? If anyone bought me a Woolworths caramel mud cake, I'd fucking shoot you. I just find those to be the most disgusting things God ever gave breath to.
So let's go.
Saying, sorry. Yes. Yeah, you could.
All right.
If you shot the mud cake out of that big cannon, you would kill people.
You would. You really would.
Take down, you would see the trajectory carved through the landscape across the bake-off grounds.
So David knew to avoid, obviously, cocoa because Paul was worried. David was making what he called his chocolate, Armagnac and prune cake. I don't know why he featured any of the other ingredients whatsoever.
He should have just popped a bottle of Armagnac on a plate. I went,
Well,
here you go.
I think I tweeted out at one point that all his recipe was flour, baking raising agent, and Armagnac. That was all that was in the cake.
He just wafted chocolate near it.
And at one point he holds the bottle up. It's 3/4 empty and he goes, and I'm not finished yet. I've still got to he still had to make his drizzle.
It's like he's trying to discover flavour. He's been hit hard for the past 10 weeks on his flavour. And he's like, okay, this is going to, like, even though it says make a chocolate cake, he's like, I found a flavour. It's Armagnac.
It's a flavour.
It's a flavour.
It's a clearly defined flavour.
The only good thing about him using Armagnac, for me personally, was Noel Fielding saying the word Armagnac.
Oh, it happened a number of times too. You sit there in your little Armagnac glory. What I did like was, and the first thing he was doing with that was actually he was putting the prunes in the Armagnac. And by the way, is David in the pocket of Big Prune? Has a baker used prunes more often?
Look, I think he just likes to keep poo and prawl regular.
That was a slip. It was an appropriate slip. Poo and prawl.
Poo and prawl. They're kind of like the cartoon versions of Prue and prawl.
You can't say it now, can you?
I can't.
You're stuck with poo and prawl.
I'm gone. This whole thing, I finally cracked.
So it's about, well, it took the sinking prunes and Armagnac to do it.
Yep.
So, which was funny because they got up to sort of talk to David and they were like, we're worried about that. So you're soaking these already heavy prunes, yep, and you're soaking them in booze, yep. Then you're going to put them in a batter, yep, and you're going to bake them in a cake, yep. And they're going to sink to the bottom. And you just saw David go,
nah. But I found a flavour.
But Armagnac, you won't notice. And sure enough, nobody noticed where the prunes were. Did you hear a word about the fucking prunes?
No, it was all about the booze.
All they could talk about was, well, you can smell the Armagnac. Well, you can taste the Armagnac. All you can taste is the... I don't even know if there's anything else there.
And that set up drunk judges for the rest of the day.
Which might be probably helping him. So Alice decided to make a chocolate cake the only way she knows how. Pears.
And maple syrup.
There we go now. Chocolate and pears. Not apples and pears, everybody, but chocolate and pears.
Chocolate and pears.
Chocolate, pears. Her dark chocolate ganache had maple cream cheese filling. She said that she likes her cakes a bit more fudgy and a bit more dense. And then the pears obviously were going to make an interesting sort of layer within the cake as well.
Mm-hmm. You know what would have really helped make that chocolate cake like chocolatey and fudgy? Actual chocolate.
Or even cocoa. Because, cocoa might be used.
Might be used, and ta-da! No mites about it.
Good advice.
Some cocoa.
So we got our Steph. They cut over to Steph, and Steph was going with the traditional Black Forest cake. She had kirsch inside it, of course, gold leaf gilded cherries, probably a nod to a former Canadian Bake-Off judge there. Rochelle Adonis, gold leafing the cherries.
Look at it, brought it out of the 70s, He put some gold leaf on it, got it into the 80s.
1983.
Yeah. Look, it's how they served it on Wall Street.
I have no issue, by the way.
With lines of cocaine across the top.
That was there, rather than like white chocolate. It was,
on a stripper's naked body.
Yeah, lines of coke. So... I had no problems with her actually making the Black Forest either because they wanted a good chocolate cake and like a Black Forest is a good chocolate cake.
Some people argued about the ultimate chocolate cake. Yeah. Some would argue you could put to them Black Forest cake is the ultimate chocolate cake.
Yep. So then they did the first family reference where Steph talked about her mum and they cut to her family. And it was interesting when they did the bits to the family, most of them, like the David one, the David one was a nothing piece. And I'm not saying that because he's nothing, but they didn't say much of anything other than he's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
That was it. The Steph and the Alice one, they gave you a bit of an insight into what they were worried about with each of them. So with Steph, her mum, her stepmom, all they kept on saying was, she's got so much to be confident over.
Yeah.
We just needed to be more confident.
And they did flag something which I thought was interesting to give context to Steph, and that's, they said a year ago, she wasn't where she is now.
Yeah.
That she was having a rough time of it.
Yeah.
And that baking helped her through that. And for me, just watching Steph over there and having lived with an anxiety disorder and depression for years, just watching Steph have really awesome days and then really down days, I just feel that there's a lot going on for her. And I really commend her for doing this show.
Yep.
While living with, possibly something that affects her
and we'll talk
emotionally.
We'll obviously talk a bit more about that when we get to the technical and then the showstopper, unfortunately, because when the wheels came off for Steph, the wheels really came off the wagon.
Yeah.
Now, David, we finally got to understand David's damage. I've been waiting to work out what the hell was the problem. Now, the reason I say this, go back to episode 1.
Yes.
David's the healthy baker.
That's
David's
right.
going to do nothing but healthy alternatives. David doesn't believe in sugar. David doesn't believe in flavour. Apparently that was true. David doesn't... We found out. He said the only time he was ever allowed to have icing was on a birthday cake. The rest of the time his mother wouldn't let him have icing because she banned sugar from their house.
She sounds like a nutter, and
that was even the toast.
A lot of love.
That was even the toast at the end to David. To David's was about David's creativity and his mother's food snobbery paying off.
Yes, obviously she's just like, no, you can't have that. That's bad for your body. I mean, I grew up. There was a family that went to Girl Guides and Brownies with us, and they were absolutely lovely. But their parents were like Carib lovers, and like they took us to the movies.
You've talked about the Carib lovers, yes.
They took us to the movies, which is great, but they brought Scroggin.
Yes, we've had the Scroggin conversation.
I kudos to them. It's the first time I tried pumpernickel, and thanks to them, I got. But they were also the family.
That's a phrase you don't hear every day, by the way.
They were also the family that used one tea bag for at least 4 to 5 or 6 cups of tea, because someone would come over and the same tea bag would be used. So my mum, being my mum, is not shy, and she'd say, I want the first dunk of that tea bag.
That's a very Alice thing.
Because it wasn't even that they put it in a teapot, which would make sense then. You could put your tea bag in the teapot, let it steep, and then pour the cups. No, it was in each cup as you went.
Now, the segue they got to get to Alice's bench.
Who does that? Who goes, I'm going to be frugal? Now, I found out years later that this person decided that they'd do some unapproved by the council extensions on their house, including digging under the front room of their terrace house.
Oh, good.
That went well.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway.
But... Well, I mean, and you said who does that? The answer was my great aunt, who used to do 1 granule of coffee in the coffee and 1 or 2 baked beans on a small tin. One of those really tiny tins of baked beans. That could last 3-4 days if you were careful.
Oh, yeah.
So we got to Alice's bench quite interestingly. Paul was stalking it. And Paul did this a few times with Alice because he knew he could panic her. And there's a bit later on, which I absolutely loved, of Paul stalking Alice. But they got to Alice's bench here to go to cut to Alice's house. She really is out of a British baking advertisement.
Yes.
She's the spokesperson for Big Flour.
Look how she was dressed. It was so beautiful. I love that top.
The funniest part was the top in the photo as a girl.
Yeah.
She was wearing the equivalency now. It was an equivalent photo. She's
like a sim, because I'm playing The Sims a lot at the moment.
You are.
She's like a sim growing up through the ages, with similar clothing.
But far more importantly, let's talk about her parents. So we are used to seeing on Bake Off and MasterChef Tiger Mother.
Yeah.
And Tiger Father. What we have here, though,
is Badger Mum and Dad.
We have English Badger parents. All right?
We're just so proud. Now, we're a house of Hufflepuff.
Yes.
So we're all for Badger parents. But they're stolid. They're hardworking.
Yep.
They believe in you no matter what.
And remember, when they didn't say good luck to Alice. At no point did they say good luck. Her mother's toast to her daughter was, wishing you good management.
Could you imagine on her wedding day, good management of your marriage?
But this also goes to speak to Alice's big problem, which is her time management was horrible. She never understood when a challenge was ending. She'd be halfway through doing something else, and they're like, Alice, you've got, do I have to do that now? Oh, there are a couple of times I was amazed that Alice ever finished a bake.
Yeah.
So, her time management's always been her problem, and sure enough, her mother wishes her good management. So it's warning, warning, warning. With Steph, it's like she's got no confidence, and if confidence falls apart, that'll be a problem. Warning, warning, warning. And David, we got nice guy.
He's a nice bloke. And his mum doesn't use sugar. Cut to David using prunes.
And he's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy, and he's certainly punctual, which is kind of what Pru's at the end summary was. We'll come to that. We'll get there at the end. But it was foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So Alice decided at this point in time to pull one of her cakes apart to see if it was fine.
Now, forget your skewer. Forget listening to your bake.
Rip the top off.
And
then she looked at it and went, no, it's not. Do I have time to make another one? No, I probably don't.
I'll just glue that back down.
Puts the top back on it and goes, this is highly irregular, and puts it back in the oven.
One thing we know we'll never see in the follow-up is her being taken on board with Noel and Val for the Listen to Your Bakes tour.
Oh, no listening. She just ripped the heart out of it. She's seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom one too many times and pulling the heart out. So David, as I said, David had his, at this point, like, it was just pure booze.
Yeah.
And then they got to the judging. So let's go through the judging. David, they said it was effective.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, okay, so when the first definition of your cake is effective. Then they cut it. But then they cut it open. And when they cut it open, that was when they said, you can smell the Armagnac. Then they took a mouthful and they went, oh my God, all you can taste is the Armagnac. And then Pru's like, I can't smell or taste anything except for booze. And that kind of, that we said he had problems with flavour.
Yeah, not anymore. He fucking found one.
This time the problem was they went, there are prunes and chocolate in there, but I'm struggling to identify where they are.
Yeah, it's all Armagnac all the time.
All the Armagnac all the time. What a radio station that would be.
Welcome to David 3FM, all Armagnac all the time.
So Alice's was described...
Next, prunes and chocolate.
Alice's was described...
Featuring Armagnac.
Alice's was described as wobbly and clumsy. Not what you want in a grand final description. Prue Leaf there with some good descriptions.
Her bake is something that I would seriously consider seeing in week 2. Or cake week. Like it was...
Prue was like, but it might taste good. And then they tasted it and they said the texture's actually quite lovely and the flavour was light.
But you can't taste the chocolate.
Because Paul's like, there's too much maple, there's too much pear, you haven't used real chocolate, you've used cocoa. The ginger, all of the other flavours are dominating. It's not a great chocolate cake. Prue disagreed, by the way, and thought it was beautifully balanced. Paul's like, I can't taste any chocolate. She hadn't used chocolate.
The brief was, the what was it? The ultimate chocolate cake.
Now, Steph, they said it was very 70s, but they didn't say that in a bad way. They said, but very well done.
Yep.
They said it had very clear, distinctive layers, and when you saw it, the cross-section was amazing.
And apparently Prue was a trolley lady.
Yeah, they were talking about the idea of, she was talking about, they bring it around on the trolley, and Prue's like, I'll be pushing the trolley. So Prue and Paul absolutely loved it. Paul's only thing was it might be slightly overbaked, but it's only very slight, and it doesn't impact the flavour. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, David's has been horrible, Alice's has been horrible, Steph is in front.
Yep.
Then we get to the technical.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so I
was happy with this choice of bake. I was really happy for it.
But, I mean, before we even get to there,
sorry.
I have been waiting for somebody to do this, and finally, and of all the sets of hosts, of judges that I thought would do it, these two weren't it. When Noel and Sandy go, right, off you pop, and they turn around, and Paul and Prue just stood. And deadpanned and waited until Noel and Sandy lost it. They just stood. And I have been waiting to see a set of judges do that and just stand there and go, no.
We're not going. We want to watch this bullshit.
Not leaving anywhere. Now, it was interesting because they did the twice-baked Stilton souffle with a lavash cracker.
Yep.
They had to do 6 of them. What I thought, there were a couple of things that I thought was interesting. First of all, we've seen souffle in grand finals. The Australian Bake Off, for example, did that. The year that Olivia won.
Yep.
And what I actually loved about that one was in the grand final, they did staggered.
Yeah.
They did big souffle, not individuals.
Yeah.
They did big souffles. And what you had to do was they staggered them all, and the judges sat back to the kitchen, so they couldn't see whose it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they baked staggered so that they would come out at the right point, perfectly hot and ready to go.
Yeah.
And the judges would sit there and write their judgments down. It was really well done. I like the way Australia did this. This, I absolutely adored it. I thought this was a great decision.
And I think it's a good technical for a grand final. It's got 2 elements of baking to it, and they're both, and it's savoury, so it's mixing up.
And as Paul said, because it was Paul's technical, if they aren't whisked enough, you'll get a lack of air, and so the souffle won't rise. If you whisk it too much, you'll knock the air out of it, and the souffle won't rise.
Yeah.
So it's a really tight balance. They said the crackers need to be balanced perfectly, and they said you've got to get the timing because it's the twice baked, and you've got to get the parmesan on top of it as well. And they said it's just this balance of when to use the cheese and where to use the cheese and how to construct the mixture. Now, of all of the things that I thought were going to trip people over,
You thought it was the roux?
I thought it might be the roux. So let's talk about the roux. So the first instruction is make...
Danny LaRue, measure my fingers.
Measure my fingers. Oh, God. If you've never heard that Ross Noble story, you need to hear that Ross Noble story at some point. But you had to make a roux. Again, now all I can hear in my head is measure my fingers. Alice...
Go for the actress who played Blanche instead.
True.
Rue, what's her facey?
So Rue McClanahan.
That's it.
God, we're going through all our roux, aren't we?
Yeah.
Australian footballer Storm roux. There you go.
Hunger Games.
Oh, God.
She's dead. Dead Rue.
Dead roux. Make a roux.
See her around my dad's place.
Alice admitted that she's never made a roux. And Sandy came over to her and she goes, never made a bechamel? A white sauce, a cheese sauce? Never made? No. And you can just see Sandy going, I'm absolutely staggered. Like, Sandy couldn't believe that someone had not made a roux before.
I just wanted to see Sandy just keep going with listing, like, all the things you'd use a roux for. Like,
well, we got that with the next thing that happened. Not so much with Sandy listing things and becoming annoying, but instead we had Noel, who went over to, and unfortunately it was poor Steph, and she was starting to get stressed. And Noel comes over and goes, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be tasty goodness. From an old commercial. I was like, tasty goodness. Tasty goodness.
And going, I love you, Noel, but not now.
And he just kept going to the point where Steph looked at him like she was going to murder him, and Noel's like, tasty goodness, and looked at her and went, okay, I'll go now. Like, he knew.
He's like, I am dead if I do this one more. I have to do it. I'm going.
Now, we started to get small hints of what was going to happen here. So, first of all, Steph looks at her mixture and becomes worried that she's over-whipped it. Then they cut to Alice, and Alice was talking about the mixture, but all you could see if you watched in the background was Steph running around the tent like an absolute madwoman. So the stress had already picked up. Like when Alice is doing her bit to camera, Steph is in the background just flying around the tent. Like she's running left and right trying to work out what's going on. They then cut back to Steph, and everyone is filling up the souffle molds. Mm-hmm. And everyone does what you're supposed to do, which is fill a souffle mold about halfway because they puff up. Steph fills them right to the brim.
Yeah, you could just see her decision-making skills were out the window. That stress mode was in, and she was, her gut instinct just kept leading her to doing the wrong thing.
It was really weird because then the next thing that happens is
cold water.
She looks around, and David has clearly got hot water going in his pans.
Yeah.
Alice clearly has boiling water going in her pans.
Yeah.
She looked at both of them. It wasn't a case of she didn't ever look. She looks at both of them, pauses, and goes, cold water in the bain-marie.
Oh.
And I think at that point was when I just tweeted out the phrase, no, Steph. No.
You want to create steam.
You need to create steam. You want steam, heat. She didn't get any, unfortunately. Then they made the crackers. Now, no one was really confident, but at this point, Steph was just a ball of a mess. Like the wheels, as I said, unfortunately for Steph, once the wheels started to wobble, you could just see where it was going, and it wasn't going to end well. And it just started to get loose, and the further it got out of control, Steph's solution to getting it back under control wasn't to step back and take a pause.
Yeah.
But she whipped herself into more of a frenzy to fix the problem and cover it.
I just don't think, like, we've seen it for the past 5 or so weeks. Steph's had some really good bakes, and then she's had some time in the tent where it's just not been going right for her. And I think by this time you're very tired.
Yep.
It's a stressful situation.
I mean, she said at the end, she goes, maybe the 10th week was just 1 week too far.
Yeah. And, you know, your energy to be able to cope with those things and to pull yourself when you've started to spiral, it takes a lot. So I really feel for Steph.
It was, look,
yeah.
We got to this bit here. David loses the bottom of his first souffle. It was like, oh, that's not good. And then Alice is trying to get hers out and she's struggling. And then they cut to Steph.
Oh.
And Steph turns the first one over and lifts it, and a puddle just appears.
Yeah.
Now, this is where you could tell how stressed she was. Rather than go, oh shit, and try to maybe put them back in the oven or just turn the heat right up and blast them,
yeah.
Steph continued to just turn them all over.
Yeah, it was kind of like, even while she was trying to decide what she should do,
it was a panic reaction of, I've got to get these out, I've got to get these out. So she just starts turning them. And, like, it's that idea of, and again, it's that the definition of madness is doing the same thing again and expecting a different result. And she turned the first one over and she's like, and again, not madness as in an asylum manner, but it's just like the craziness and the madness of what was going on.
Yeah.
You could just see there was this moment in her head where irrationally she was saying to herself, but the rest of them might be okay. And then she turned the next one over and she's like, but the rest of them might be okay. And she just kept turning them over like one of them was going to have worked. And instead, what we got was puddles.
Yeah.
And now, by the way, the other two weren't great. Alice's were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They were pale and just they looked completely unappetizing at all.
Yeah.
David's looked a little bit better, but they just look firmer, really. But Alice's were really pale and not very good.
And it's something that I found so disappointing in this grand final is that everyone's is okay, but it's not fantastic. It's not knock your socks off. You know, we've seen grand finals all over the shop where people are raised up and raise their game.
Yep. And this was not that grand final.
This was not that grand final.
So
it was devastating and painful. And Steph epitomised the painfulness of it.
So the judging.
Yeah.
Alice's have risen a little bit, but they were pale, they were floppy, and the biscuits were floppy as well. They said they were stable enough, but they were way underdone. They had a gluey texture. They tasted okay. Steph's, the biscuit was too thick. They said they actually tasted lovely, but it was eating a sauce. You weren't eating a souffle, you were eating a roux. David,
I don't like to be eaten.
Well, he kind of did.
I do. I like to eat buns.
David,
saucy buns.
David's biscuits were good, and they were also the soufflés were baked through. So David was first, Alice was second, and Steph was a very distant third. You could just see Steph going, "Oh well," and like she goes, "If the baking fairies are out there, they took a day off today. If they could come back tomorrow, that'd be fantastic."
Sorry, Steph, I took the baking fairies out to help make me some tasty, tasty sauce.
Thank you, Danny LaRue.
Oh, you're welcome.
Who knew that the ghost of Danny LaRue was going to appear on this podcast? Not me.
Here I am, just to bring out the sauciness of the podcast.
Let me guess. Measure your fingers?
Measure my fingers.
Measure your fingers. Okay, I'm going to tell the story.
All right.
I'm going to have to tell the story because there's a bunch of people who probably haven't heard it and they're going, we're never going to fucking hear this story. What the hell do you mean measure my fingers? So Ross Noble always used to tell the story about Danny LaRue wanted to buy a coat for his dog. And so he got the guy and he goes, I need you to make a coat for
my... Went to an expensive tailor, mind you.
Yeah, an expensive tailor. He goes, I need you to make a coat for my little dog. He goes, well, how big is the dog? You know, he goes, oh, he's about this big. And he's like, holds his hands out. He goes, he's about this big. He goes... What? He goes, measure my fingers. He goes, no, I'm going to need the dog. Like, I can't just measure your hands. He goes, about this big. No, you're really going to have to bring the dog in. He goes, no, he's about this big and holds his fingers out. He goes, measure my fingers. He's like, what? He goes, measure my fingers. He goes, look, I'm really going to need you to bring the dog in for a proper fitting. And Danny LaRue stopped, looked at him and went, what? And spoil the surprise. And it's just... It's just so, for me at this point, I don't measure my fingers. So, the showstopper. Right, now can I just point out at this point in time that the carnival needs to happen for the next Australian Bake Off Grand Final?
Yes, I'd like to see, but I reckon Australian Bake Off would get things like fire eaters. Oh, they might not go well with kids, but it'd be hilarious. Some hoop twirling people. Like in Canadian Bake Off, the guy with the crystal balls, bring him back.
That would have been cool. Bring
him over from Canada when the borders open again.
Look, you've never lived until you've seen Matt and Maggie swinging a baton at a piñata. You've never lived until you've seen that in person. You've never lived until you've watched Maggie Beer ride side saddle on a carousel.
So imagine, right?
Or Matt Moran just get on one and actually start riding it around, and just the look on Matt Moran's face of, I'm on a carousel.
So imagine over the tent, right, you have a trapeze set up.
Oh, God.
And they get Matt and Maggie up there to do a bit of a double trapeze act. Hilarious.
That would be brilliant. I would find that, I'm not going to lie, I would find that quite cool.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a trapeze act, using the tent as a tent. You know who they can get in once he gets out of prison?
Who?
Tiger King.
Oh, no. No Joe Exotic and no Carol fucking Baskin.
Oh, I want
just
Carol Baskin. Anyway.
No people who torture animals.
All right.
We're going to have an animal torture-free carnival. Oh, maybe we could bring Joe Exotic in to be the tiger and we can torture him. If that's only fair.
He saw a tiger, though, Kristie.
Oh, did he?
And it changed him, made him a man. Have you not heard his badly sung country song by someone else that wasn't him? Anyway, moving on. This is not the Tiger King podcast, save for the Tiger King podcast. Anyway, the showstopper. But forget the showstopper. No one really cared about the showstopper because Alice's parents' flight was cancelled.
Oh, my God. That was devastating.
It was devastating, but it's also like Channel 4. So, they're not going to, if they need to, send out a private jet.
I reckon it took a few things. So if you've ever seen a movie called Leap Year, I think maybe they got on a fishing boat.
Well, Paul Hollywood suggested at one point they should have swum, which I thought was fantastic because it lightened the mood because she was really upset and Paul Hollywood was just going, well, they could swim.
Did they miss the flight because of poor management? Did the Badger parents?
Maybe it was a problem. Maybe it was a problem with management.
Because, it's not good luck or bad luck.
Or as Badger parents, were they building
bad management?
Or as Badger parents, were they building a dam? Anyway.
Badgers don't. That's beavers.
Well, England doesn't have beavers, so therefore the Badgers have to take responsibility for it.
They have otters.
What about voles?
Vole parents.
Vole parents. Don't hear much about the vole parents. All right.
It sounds like what happened when the Wind and the Willows grew up and had kids.
Bake Off.
Bake Off.
So, the showstopper was an illusion picnic basket feast.
Oh, you don't want to hang out with the weasels.
Now, I'm going to make a very strong statement here. I fucking hate illusion cakes.
Yeah.
I am over them. I have seen them far too many times for my life.
I've always been disappointed by illusion cakes that aren't the size of the actual moon. Like, it's supposed to be an illusion. If you're going to make a moon, David, and this is Australian David.
Yeah, this is Australian David. How you going, Dave?
Make it the real size.
I know you're listening too. So I hate a fucking illusion cake. So the idea of an illusion feast holds no joy for me. It was really disappointing. Can I also point out that at this point in time, Sandy Togsvig, when they were doing their bit beforehand, when they were doing Anyone Could Win, they were talking about the carnival outside, and Sandy turns around and goes, the four of us in one sack, there's your money shot right there.
Well, the thing is, Sandy's been in a sack all season, apparently.
Apparently. Who knew? They've thrown that sack in a lot. Now,
I loved seeing Noel come down on the slide.
Noel coming down on the slide was a highlight here. So they had to make
Watching Noel go down is a pleasure to all. Really.
So they had to make picnic baskets and the contents all had to be made of something that wasn't what the content was. Yeah. So,
thus the illusion.
So my question was this a metaphor for the whole series? Because Paul Hollywood turns around and says, I need this to look like this. And he goes, and the cake should look like a banana. And I added, this should look like a grand final. It's all deceptive.
The illusion.
The illusion of a grand final.
What should have been a grand final?
Illusion. So let's continue through the illusion of a grand final. David was making a cheese board out of crackers. He was also making things like the cheese was out of a lemon pound cake, for example. Alice was doing an end-of-year school celebration with Prosecco jelly. She was also making things like chicken drumsticks out of carrot cake. And she was making everything out of carrot cake. She also made the Scotch eggs out of carrot cake.
Well, you're onto a good thing.
Now, Steph was trying to make a lemon poppy seed cake chicken burger. And then at one point there, she rolls that in coconut to sort of do that.
Yeah, that looks
Then Noel and Steph decided to bond. And so Steph was singing "You've Got a Friend in Me." And Noel's like, "Oh, about Toy Story." And she goes, at one point that was by Moby.
Yeah, so Moby or Toy Story.
So, what I have done...
Yes.
I have got 4 either lyrics or quotes, and I'm not going to say if it's 2 and 2 or 3 and 1 or whatever it is. Toy Story or Moby?
Excellent. Let's play.
Right, number 1.
Yes.
And there seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
That is Moby.
That is Toy Story.
What?
That is Buzz Lightyear.
Buzz Lightyear, that's right, because there seems to be... Yeah, okay.
All right, second.
Yes.
People, they come together. People, they fall apart.
Oh, that's Moby.
That's We're All Made of Stars by Moby.
Yes.
All the people push and pull, but let's just go out and ride.
Oh, Toy Story?
That is Moby.
Oh, beautiful. My God. Steph is right. Is it Toy Story or is it Moby?
But we're not on my planet, are we?
Toy Story?
Correct!
Oh, thank God. I feel going to go, that's Moby. I'm like, I don't remember that lyric.
Thank you for playing the world's fastest growing game show, Toy Story or Moby. So, I didn't tell Kristie any of those, by the way. I literally turned the screen away from her. Prue was worried about Alice's focus. And there's like, I worry about her focus. I think she's worried about her parents. She's running around all over the place. Paul went, David looks really calm. While they were talking about this, they just kept on cutting to what I called the chaotic edit of Steph. Which was just, every time they cut to Steph, there was more noise, there was more movement, none of it made sense. They did lots of flash jump cuts on her. While David was just, now they talked about David just always being calm. I'm going to put that down, to be honest.
Yeah.
There was no pressure on David.
No, it wasn't his to lose.
He had nothing to lose in this grand final.
No.
Even he sort of said at the end.
Yeah.
And like Paul laughingly at the end goes, he's come from absolutely nowhere.
You know, I know another athlete
we'll
that's come from absolutely nowhere.
Comparison, because everyone came up with the exact same comparison. So, but David was a picture of calmness because, like, he had nothing to lose.
No.
Steph goes into this as possibly the strongest favourite we've ever seen.
Yes.
She was so far clear.
Although I got worried about her for the past 4 weeks.
Well, it wasn't the past 4 weeks. Last week she was a bit quieter.
Yeah.
And as we said, the show has relied a lot on the idea of Steph being really good.
And when Steph's good, she's
Steph's
phenomenal.
good, and the show's much better. But when Steph wasn't good, it didn't raise the level of the other bakers, and that became a problem.
Yeah.
So they were worried about that. Steph is whirlwinding around, and you can see the spiral. But then we got my other favourite Alice moment of the day. Paul walks over and again stands behind Alice's bench.
Yeah.
And looks, and Alice is stirring her mixture with a wooden spoon. And Paul just keeps looking, and she looks and stops and goes, I'll go and get a spatula. And walks away. And you can just see Paul picked up the wooden spoon, stirred it a bit, and just laughed.
Like, I have the power.
I'm living rent-free right now, right in the middle of your head. Then they cut back to Steph, and all you could see, you couldn't identify a single thing happening at Steph's bench. It was just movement.
Yeah.
Right? She was running in circles. She was not focused.
No.
And again, it's one of those ones where, you're trying to claw your way out and you're just grabbing everything you can grab. And everything's caving in, but you keep grabbing at the stuff falling.
At this point, I just wanted to go up, hand Steph a Snuggie and take her somewhere cozy, just to time out.
So
just to like go, fuck it, I don't need this.
So this all sort of crescendoed for poor Steph in a run. So she got the dome cake tin out, and she turns it over and starts trying to shake the cake out, and the bottom of the cake sticks, and the top of it falls out. She looks and goes, "That's dry anyway."
Yeah.
Now it's all fallen apart, and then she goes over to the KitchenAid mixer, and that's been left on. So her macarons are now over whipped, so they're liquid, and she's like, "I can't use this liquid." Then she's trying to mix the icing, so she gets the hand beaters and she starts trying to do that, and the bowl goes flying, and she grabs the hand beaters while they're spinning. And you could just see when she grabbed the beaters, there was this moment of pause where she was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, that was for me, when she grabbed hold of the beaters, that was the moment where you just saw Steph stop and go, well, this is fucked.
Yeah.
Well, that was her moment. At that point in time, I think from that moment on, Steph had come to terms with the idea that she was not winning this.
Yeah, and like my hope for Steph after all of this is that she doesn't look back on it with kind of like
Don't look at the grand final with regret. Look at the fact that you've had 9 amazing weeks.
Yeah, that you've done so much and you've
dominated, not done well at.
No.
You've dominated large sections of it. It's like the last Australian series where Sunny won all these technical challenges and just kept winning. Like, again, it was a domination thing.
Yeah.
It was the same here. Like, it's a domination. So take
You're
that.
a dominatrix, Steph.
Yeah, well, what we're saying, Steph, is you're a dominatrix. You're a baking dominatrix.
You can whip it good. You can dominate.
Anyway, back to the illusion of grand final.
Oh, okay, that's right. We're talking about baking. Okay.
Back to the illusion.
Of the grand final. The show that looked like a grand final.
Because the illusion of the grand final.
But you cut it open.
It is now a grand final, officially. Bring on the nougatine. You only ever see nougatine in a bake-off grand final.
It's very rare you see the nougatine trotted out.
Now, obviously, the first exponent of the nougatine that we saw in a grand final was Barb.
Oh, it's delicious. Her big treasure box.
It might not have held.
I got to gnaw on Barb's box.
It might not have held, but by God, Barb's box was delicious. Anyway.
Tasty box there, Barb.
How you going, Barb? So everyone was making nougatine because they had to make the baskets. David's looked good. It cost him a few burns. Like, he just kept on putting his hand and going, ow, that's hot. I'm like, why are you grabbing the nougatine? And there was a moment when he was putting the handles on the basket where he's like, I've never actually tested this before. I just assumed it would be easy to bend.
Of course.
And then when he does it and puts it up, and like poor Steph is having her day and she goes, I'm not going to put a handle on this, it's not working. And she turns around and David's perfectly proportioned basket is behind her and she's just like, oh, God. That
juxtaposition is like when you watch a cartoon and they're going down a river and they're heading towards, a fork in the, like a bend in the river. And there's like rainbows and like scary things on the other side.
The way that I would do it is Kristie the Clown makes his balloon animal.
Yeah.
And then goes, what did you make, Sideshow Luke Perry? And Sideshow Luke Perry says, a 19th century carousel.
Yes.
That is the perfect way to describe what happened here. Like, again, it's either that or to go with another Simpsons one, because bugger it, we're going to make a Simpsons reference again. It's us. The other way to do it is when Bart's bigger brother comes in from the Air Force and like shows off the ray gun and shoots people. Yeah. And then Milhouse gets up, I have a horsey. Nay. Nay. Was. So then we got my favourite Noel and Sandy cutaway of the whole series. The Dodgem car.
Okay.
Well, I love the fact that you've learned to drive, and I've been really happy to help. Thank you for teaching me. No, it's been really good, but I think we might have had a bit of a problem. Why? Well, I think we took a bit of a wrong turn, and they're in the middle of the tent, and they do the announcement, and then Noel goes, I don't know what happened. I mean, it all went a bit blurry.
Can I just say, we have the highest stake bake in the whole series.
And they're in the middle of the fucking
Dodgem. Like, imagine that going on while you're baking. It's just crews moving in a Dodgem car.
Yeah, why are we moving in a Dodgem car? Why not?
Why aren't we moving
Actually,
in a Dodgem car?
no one would have asked that question because Noel Fielding's in there.
Yeah.
I imagine that having Noel Fielding in your cast means that nobody asks those questions.
No, it's like, he's just like the props organizer, is bringing in like a large cardboard cutouts of giraffes, and no one asks because they're just like, it's for Noel. Okay.
So, Alice is concerned that her macarons haven't risen, but the good news is that her parents have. They've made the flight.
Woo!
So they were going to make it. And by the way...
That wasn't good luck. That was good management.
And by the way, outside of a very brief flick across the camera at them when they gave her a hug, and that wasn't even a long dawdling in on them, that was the last time we mentioned Alice's parents.
It is this...
They've made the flight, okay, and that's the last time we ever heard from them because they sort of showed them giving her a quick hug, but they didn't like go over and dwell on it. I'm so pleased. Oh, it was such a rush. They're just like, oh.
It is a difference
organisation.
Bake Off UK, British Bake Off and Australian Bake Off, is the interaction with family and friends. Like, Australian Bake Off, you've got all the family and friends crowding outside, cheering them on, and you have that moment where everyone...
They walk down the hill.
Yeah.
Like in British, they're just there.
Like, could you imagine if they had that moment where Steph's stressed as fuck, right? Things are going wrong. Her mum comes in, gives her a hug.
Yep.
Like, imagine how good that would have been.
Well, look, it's not the first time that someone has missed a flight trying to get to a Bake Off grand final, is it, Robert?
He did try to.
To be fair, he didn't miss the... Yeah, same thing happened as what happened to Alice's parents. They cancelled the flight.
Yeah.
But, he made it, and we had a long, lingering sort of look across the crowd thing, which was hilarious. Anyway.
You and your bromance.
I was on one side of the crowd, Robert was on the other side of the crowd. He's rather tall, I'm rather short.
Yeah.
So he had to spot me.
No, you would have had to spot him because he's high above
I waved, and then Robert had to make his way through the crowd. And again, being really tall, that's quite easy for him to do.
I thought it was a bit weird though when you both did it slow-mo and played like some love song. What was it? I think it was not Time of My Life.
That was I Want It That Way.
I Want It That Way. There we go. You are.
I brought the harpsichord for that purpose. Did you not wonder why I had a harpsichord?
Oh, it's you, my love. You're a bit of a Noel Fielding, really. I just kind of like nod and smile and go, yep, that's an appropriate thing to take to a Bake Off grand finale.
And kudos to Chris, by the way, for carrying it for me. Anyway, so...
He is the bard amongst gentlemen.
He really is the bard. So Noel turns around to David and goes, I'll come back when you're panicking, but I really don't think that's going to happen. And it didn't. Now, I loved Alice at the end here. Like, she just sampled the macarons, looked and goes, well, they're awful, but at least there's something.
Yeah. That's what you want to hear.
Then they ended the challenge, and like Alice took a big drink. David just sort of stood at his bench, and again, poor Steph just sunk to the ground and like rested herself against the bench. Like, well, that couldn't have gone any worse, really, could it?
Look, I really feel that Steph is a metaphor for 2020.
I think so.
Starts off fantastic, lots of hope. And crumbles.
All right, so Alice, the illusion they said was great except for the ice cream that didn't look like ice cream. They said the blueberry buns lacked a bit of flavour. The carrot cake, Scotch eggs were really good. They loved those. Mm-hmm. The macarons had a strong flavour, and they liked the orange and cardamom in the buns. They thought that was really nice too.
Yeah.
David, Paul Hollywood thought it looked amazing. The bun that looked like peach was really nice, but a bit chewy. The fig sausage rolls were nice. The cheese that was the cake was very soft, and they said it was absolutely magnificent. Mm-hmm. Steph. Now, I noted that when Steph walked up, she looked a broken woman.
Yep.
Like, she just looked broken.
And Paul and Prue were very aware of that, and I think they went gently. They were honest, but they weren't brutal.
They said the burger looked good. The bun, the topping of the individual buns that she made was not right. The hot cross bun that she made was quite nice, but needed to be improved a little bit more. The strawberries were really flat. The booze went overboard. In the strawberry, the macarons. The orange and poppy seed burger looked amazing. It needed more flavour, and it was really overbaked. Now, that takes us to the end. They come out, they don't muck around. They announce the winner of the Great British Bake Off is David.
Yep.
I thought Prue Leith summed up the series quite nicely.
Yep.
They asked Prue to say a couple of words about the winner, and her comment was, he's never lost his temper and he's neat. That kind of sums it up. There was nothing at all about baking.
No.
There was nothing about flavour. There was nothing about baking. It was he's never lost his temper and he's neat. He's been even-keeled and he keeps everything tidy and the way that he bakes looks nice.
And, Paul's like, he came from nowhere.
I think, to be honest with you, I think Paul and Prue were a bit devastated.
Yeah.
I think they were sure that, first of all, that Steph was going to win.
Yeah.
Secondly, if Steph wasn't going to win, I think they thought that Alice was going to step it up a bit more. I kind of thought that Alice possibly should have because she wasn't good, she wasn't bad, she was consistent. David had been a bit more...
up and down, yeah.
But...
At one point, I think Paul and Prue were trying to convince us that those carrot cake Scotch eggs were enough to win the grand final.
You could see them trying.
But there was no question.
The problem was if it was a normal episode, you go, yeah, okay, David's going to win that. That's fair. And look, as two things can be true. One, David could have done the best in the grand final, so you go, well, he deserves to win. Well, okay, he deserved to win that, yes. The problem is when it's an overall series on the line, it leaves the audience feeling, look, everyone said the same thing straight away, this is a bit Stephen Bradbury.
Yep.
Like, nowhere near it, not even vaguely close. Everyone else fell over to get David over the line. That's not saying that David is not a skilled baker. It's not saying that he can't do things really well, but it's not something that's been demonstrated consistently. It felt off. The whole thing felt off. And the whole series has kind of felt a bit off.
Yeah. And I mean, the interesting thing is that they now have another year to rest.
Well, they didn't have Australian Bake Off to copy.
No.
Which is kind of their problem, because usually they'd have Australian Bake Off to steal things from. Because that's what happened previously. Like they lifted Vegan Week, for example. Well, that was a lift.
But here we are, right? It's now 2020. We're in a pandemic. Bake Off's Great British Bake Off they've announced that they're postponing the filming, which is understandable, Don't want to eliminate bakers.
Literally eliminate bakers?
I'm sorry. You're dead. That's not cool. We've had to let them go because their respiratory function was not great.
Yeah.
Their bake was fantastic, but they just couldn't breathe. So there's a whole year for the crew, for production to rest. And maybe that's going to help.
It would be nice. It would be nice for them. The
bakers know that they're going to go in. They've got a whole fucking, at least 90 days to practice. If they can get a hold of flour and some yeast and eggs and milk and sugar, they're sorted.
We've raised this before. The article that was written this year, which was what's wrong with Bake Off and what's wrong with the judges. I genuinely believe what was wrong with the judges was, and not in a nasty way about them, the bakers. I feel like the judges had a level of expectation. We've seen this happen before in Bake Off, in British Bake Off in particular.
Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago, where by the 5th week they were getting them to make sponge cakes because the bakers weren't meeting the bar. This year we saw it a couple of times where they basically, as I said, they took baking out of the equation for a couple of weeks there to give everyone a bit of a break to bring them back and reset them. And I kind of feel like the thing that threw Paul and Prue off a bit was that they were setting challenges that in other years, and Paul in particular, people have jumped and done the challenge. And what they've found in this year is that it hasn't consistently happened. There's been a couple of people that have been able to do it. But overall, people haven't jumped. And again, it doesn't make them bad bakers.
No.
It just means that people aren't preparing the way they used to go into this, preparing with, or with the skills they used to go in with.
Yeah.
I think people used to be more well-rounded as bakers, and now they might go in targeting things. And if they don't get the exact thing they've targeted...
Yeah.
Could you imagine... we had it this year, but could you imagine someone goes on to Bake Off and loudly announces, I'm not a cake person. We had it.
Yep.
It happened.
It's like you're on Bake Off.
Right, you're on Bake Off. I don't really know. Bread's not a thing I'm very good at.
I think, in my head, I'm thinking, are we now moving out of a phase where people's interest in baking and it being a phenomena and something that people pursued in England, not necessarily Australia, I think it's still strong in Australia, but in England, is that starting to subside? No,
I don't think it's subsiding. I think what's happening is you're seeing, we've talked about this with MasterChef, which is a segue to something we'll talk about in a minute. I think you've seen it with MasterChef. We're getting a lot of the Instagram. I think the two big things that are in play are things like Instagram and Instagram cakes, which are all about look and not about flavour because you're not tasting the damn thing.
Yeah.
And things like Cake Boss, which are all about look.
Yeah.
And all they're making
is substance.
It's a basic vanilla cake with Rice Krispie outside and fondant. right? And the problem is that everyone is making cakes that are designed for Instagram to look amazing.
Yeah.
But it's about flavour and depth of flavour. And that's one of the things, look, this year, perfect example, David wins. His thing was about look and aesthetic. It wasn't so much about flavour.
And just thinking about it, like if you're a producer and you're picking between two people to put on a show, one who has maybe an Instagram following that they can pop on there versus someone who doesn't have that.
Let's use the obvious example, all right? And this is an obvious example. You've got to choose between, right, you've got to make a decision, not having had conversations with them. You look at them and you look at maybe the resume. You've got to make a decision between David and Val.
Yeah.
Right? The producers are not picking Val.
No.
Right? They're not picking Val. They're picking David. And that's not a shot at David. But what I'm saying is they're looking for a type.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a problem. Whereas, and I think that's something that happened when they moved to Channel 4. One of the things I will blame Channel 4 about is the way they're selecting the contestants has... I think the Channel 4 series, the weakness of the Channel 4 series so far on Bake Off has actually been the contestants.
Yeah.
I don't think they've picked well.
No.
I think by and large they've sort of let it fall away a little bit.
Because I did feel that David was a homework baker.
They're looking for ratings.
Again, I think he's a lovely bloke, but...
and he's probably a very good baker when given those tools, but...
Yeah.
He wasn't really given those tools. And I think they go on now anticipating certain things.
And I'm not seeing a lot of creativity or people being on the cutting edge of stuff.
I don't think British Bake Off's in trouble, but I do think they need to rethink casting. That's where I think they need to redo it. And what I want to see are just people who are very good at baking things. Like, bring it back to someone who can bake everything.
Yeah.
Like, and you get him in the kitchen, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I want to see challenges. We talk about one of the joys of Bake Off, and it happens a lot with Australian Bake Off. People go home not because they've done badly. People go home because someone's got to go home.
Yep.
And someone's got to go home, and unfortunately, you're at the bottom of what is a very good round. You've done very well. Most weeks you'd be fine. You've got to go home. And I think one of the things I have a problem with about the way this turned out is David was at no point one of the strongest bakers. And possibly the week they did the double elimination should have gone home. The week before the double elimination, if they had done a double elimination, would have gone home. There were at least 3 different opportunities where David probably was the choice to go home, and he sidestepped it somehow. And I can't...
Dare we say Brad breed his way to...
He did. And again, it's not a shot at David. And I want to really make this plain. Because somebody will listen to this, take it out of context and go, you hate David. No, but...
And David won't listen to this. He won't give 2 shits about us.
Oh, he might. He might. You never know. So, with that in mind, that was British Bake Off. And I know it sounds a little bit like a downer, but it wasn't a brilliant series. Now, we need to talk about a couple of things about British Bake Off before we sign off.
No, I'm going to pause. I want to end on a happy note.
Well, that's what I want to get to.
All the bakers being seen.
Yes.
One of the joys of Bake Off is when you see that end picnic and you get to see all the bakers reuniting.
Yep.
And seeing Helena looking fucking glorious was wonderful. And you had Welsh lady, I can't remember her name, and a few others. And this is the thing, I usually know everyone's names and I just don't.
That got raised tonight before we started, where somebody raised on Twitter and said to me about, I can't remember the third baker's name in the grand final.
Yeah.
And it was Alice. And as I said, I'll cop to it. When I was writing the notes for the first 2 weeks, I left a space.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't remember a name. Right? I also didn't like the 13. I don't want to see the 13 again.
No. And I did like a whole, maybe it was bad luck. Actual bad luck. No, it was bad management.
Yeah, bad management.
Bad management. I loved seeing Rosie playing with the little kitten at the end too. That was very cute.
That was quite cute. All right, so MVP of the series, without question,
Noel Fielding.
Noel Fielding.
Hands
absolute
fucking down.
Again, honourable mention goes to Steph, but MVP of this series is Noel Fielding, and it's not close.
No.
That man carried this show like you wouldn't believe.
He's so genuine, and, you can't fake that level of awesomeness and care and genuineness.
And Sandy Togsvig's been doing her...
Sexy.
Sandy Togsvig's been doing her YouTube show the last couple of days. And I believe her comment about Bake Off was, I can only look at Mirror Glaze for so long.
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, if you're not... Again, she's doing a million other things. Now, as she said, she wasn't expecting a million other things to stop, but so did Bake Off. So, it's a bit of a thing. Look, Sandy was a reduced role this year. They cut her back. She was there, but not as often.
No, it was a waft of Sandy. Noel ran that tent, essentially.
And you could just see Noel Fielding is having the absolute time of his life doing Bake Off.
Yeah.
And again, he's mentioned it a few times on the show. You wouldn't expect this.
No.
I can't bake. You wouldn't expect this at all. This makes no sense to anybody, but here we are. And Noel just looks like he is having the most fun.
Yeah.
I thought Paul and Prue this year weren't too bad. I actually didn't have as many problems with Paul and Prue. I thought in the grand final they had nothing they could do.
Yeah.
I thought in the grand final they made the only decision they could actually make.
Yeah. When we started the series, I thought they were a bit off, but remember that week where everyone lifted? I think it was a bread week. I can't remember, but there was a week where everyone actually did well. Oh, when they took the baking out.
Took the baking away.
And suddenly everyone's spirits were lifted, and I think that was a turning point for Prue and Paul.
Yeah, but I also think that I actually also appreciated those 2 weeks before it where they laid into everybody. Because what I liked about it was they weren't, A, doing a TV bit of getting angry.
No.
And B, they also weren't just letting everyone off the hook and going, oh, well, you've all had a really good go at this and blah, 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 blah. They were like, this is British Bake Off.
Yeah.
And like last week with the semi-final, with the technical, where Paul said, this is a hard technical. And Prue's response was, it should be, it's the semi-final.
Yep.
And I'm like, good. This is what I want to see.
Yeah.
Hard, fair judging.
So, looking into 2021, where we hope we'll have another filming of Bake Off again, well, obviously the contestants have been picked, and they've got a whole year to prep for Bake Off next year. I'm hoping with a rested Prue and Paul, I'm hoping with a cast that has actually knows they're going on, has time to prep. I don't like saying during this time of pandemic that we should be productive. I think that's bullshit. I think there's a lot for everyone to deal with, and it's not easy. But if they choose to, they can bake as well. But they've got a whole year to brush up on their skills, rewatch the bake-offs, learn the basics, finesse the basics and build on it. Get to see what everyone's baking. I mean, with all these people out there pandemic baking, there's going to be some awesome shit coming out.
Buy several Mary Berry cookbooks.
Yeah. Oh, there's something that Robert's doing. What's he doing? And Monica. There's a big baking thing going on.
Cake Flicks.
Cake Flicks. Yeah.
So you need to take a look at Cake Flicks. And Robert and Monica from Australian Bake Off are doing some stuff on there. We'll put the details up. We'll put the details up in the near future about that. The other thing I want to mention as well, just on an Australian Bake Off note, I would highly recommend going and checking out Claire Hooper's Instagram.
Yes, she's making bags.
She's been making bags. So she started making bags.
She can't do any comedy festivals.
Yep. So started making bags with other people's faces on it. Now she's making with her own face on it. And they just simply say, fill me with biscuits. I believe she has clarified on her Instagram, by the way, that you can fill them with things other than biscuits.
But who would want to?
No, I would want to fill them with biscuits. They look like it's a gingham-looking bag with a print of Claire's face on it. So if you go to her Instagram and there's an Etsy link at the top of her Instagram page, go and have a look. And if you feel like doing something like baking related and bake off related and fun, buy a bag.
Yeah,
seriously. Buy a bag. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And don't forget Mel Buttle has a special coming up on ABC. So check Mel's page for those details.
Yes, check that out as well. And also, in really good news, go and check out, the other thing to check out on Instagram right now is go and check out Maggie Beer.
Yep.
Maggie is back in the kitchen and she is cooking up some amazing food.
Yep.
And it is really good to see Maggie Beer active on Instagram, cooking, doing what she does best. It's really good to see all those sorts of things. Now,
yes,
this is the last episode, obviously, of our Bake Off podcast.
Yep. So if you don't like the next show,
well, we will probably
farewell until maybe 2022.
Before that.
Yes.
Before that. There may still be, or there's something in the works coming up, which I can't say too much about. It might rhyme with Schmommenwealth Games. But we might be working on something behind the scenes to try to get something, a podcast going on that. And that might be a lot of fun.
Yes.
So preliminary discussions have happened with some people, and that could be a hell of a lot of fun coming up. So keep.
It's going to be a non-contact sport.
A completely non-contact sport because no one's allowed near each other. So that look out for that. Also, later on this week, listen out for a podcast. There's every chance there'll be another podcast dropping.
Yep.
Not a bake-off one, but a preview. What is it a preview of, you might ask?
Something hot or cold.
Something yes or no.
Something in and out.
I have never thought, by the way, I was going to be excited to say it's MasterChef.
Woo!
And so we are back to Australian MasterChef. It is Australian MasterChef. It's back to win. Is the slogan, not All Stars. It's back to win. Look, do I really like an All Stars concept? No. Do I like the 3 new judges? Hell yeah.
And I've seen.
And do I like a lot of the people in the show? Hell yeah.
So a couple of things that I have heard around the traps is that there's possibly been a bake out Bathurst way.
Yep.
A cook out Bathurst way. I have a feeling it was MasterChef doing it because my dad mentioned it. However, I'm thinking perhaps it's also Plate of Origin, but I'm not sure.
I don't think anyway. If it was Plate of Origin, there'd be nobody there.
Yeah. I know that they filmed down in Melbourne. We know that.
We know they filmed in Melbourne. They made that. That was where everyone started working out who the cast was.
Yeah.
Because everyone went, oh, look, and counted people.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Andy, Melissa, and forget his name, and it's going to come to me, the guy from South Australia, whose restaurant we went past, and I can't remember. I'm looking forward to seeing all 3 of them.
More importantly, you do remember who the first week is, don't you?
Oh, it's Gordon Ramsay week.
We are opening with Gordon fucking Ramsay. Right? We are opening with Gordon fucking Ramsay.
Now, they've announced who's on, haven't they? The cast?
Yes, they have. So the cast is out there. If you go and check the MasterChef Twitter, they will tell you who's out there. They will tell you who's on the show this year. There's a couple of people.
Jock is on Frillo. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of people coming back. Good news for a couple of people on our Twitter, obviously. Sarah.
Sarah's back.
So the many Sarahs can be once again accused of being Sarah from MasterChef. The preview that we're planning on...
Tessa's back.
Yep, so the preview that we're planning on, which will hopefully be tomorrow, it might be later in the week, but at the moment it's scheduled to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's only one person...
Sarah Cheong's back.
There's only one person that we can... Focus. There's only one person that we can get to come on and do a proper preview of MasterChef Back to Win.
I like that. Kristie, focus, Kristie.
Because I can see you. You're looking at the Instagram going, oh my God, it's that person. Oh my God, it's that person. I'm like, focus. Yeah. Focus, because I want you to focus, because why else would I want you to focus?
It's Elena Duggan.
Woo! So hopefully by tomorrow, if not by the end of the week, we'll have Elena back on again. It is always a delight and joy to get to speak to Elena. And obviously she's not going to be on MasterChef Back to Win.
Because she did it.
Because she won it the first time.
Been there, done that.
She doesn't need to go back and do it a second time. She did it the first time. Yep. She's got the giant plate. She's got the confetti falling on her.
Yeah.
You know, she's got it all. She's done it. And we're going to talk to her about a lot of different things. We'll talk to her, I think, a lot about well-being and food, because that's a kind of an important topic right now. And we're also going to talk to her about her amazing overseas adventure that she undertook.
Yeah, before.
Where she went over to the MasterChef restaurant and was the chef in residence. So we're going to talk to her about all of those fun things, plus a bit of a preview of what's coming up, plus a general chat about life, the universe and everything.
Yep.
You wouldn't want to miss it.
No.
You really wouldn't. As for the MasterChef...
Have you got anything better to do?
No, you can't go anywhere. We know you can't go out, people. So don't even pretend. Don't pretend you've got something better to do. You don't. You're going to listen to us instead. That was too forceful. Sorry. Right. The drinking game will be back for MasterChef, obviously with more MasterChef-y stuff, although I'm really confused by how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Because half the things I put on the drinking game for MasterChef are the judges.
Well, it's going to be a great period of getting to know them, getting to know their quirks, their likes. Although we do know that Miss Melissa Leong likes a good strut.
I like Melissa Leong.
Boss lady strut.
I'm an unashamed fan of Melissa Leong. So the drinking game will be back. The podcast will be back to probably a couple of nights. We'll confirm all that a bit later on. But that's been the end of this journey through British Bake Off and the last Bake Off for a bit.
I'm presuming the first one that we will get to see is probably Canadian. I'm reckoning...
Maybe. Yeah, it's a 50-50 prospect. I don't know. Let's hold off on which one's going to be first. I might be Australian. Who knows? Could be South Africa. Might be New Zealand. You watch it be New Zealand, I don't know.
Yeah, Jacinda Ardern's hardcore, border closures and looking after her people means that they recover fast when we get Bake Off from there first.
One rule.
Yeah.
Third challenge would be nice.
Yeah, third challenge.
Everyone should be able to see it, not just us.
Maybe some new judges.
And maybe some Emmets. Until we join you again for MasterChef Australia.
Yes.
I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we'll catch you all later.
Armagnac.